Thanks for having me, and thank you everyone for coming. So I'm going to start. Who am I? I'm the head of development at the Iconic, and this is actually my second FutureStack. I was speaking at the one in San Francisco a couple of years ago. The crowd was a lot smaller though. It was more the community track, so there was like 30 of us. So hey, here I am. I'm also the organizer of the SID PHP user group. And I'm going to give a little plug here. If anyone has a venue and wants to help us out, I'm more than welcome to have a chat later. And you can find me on Twitter. I don't really tweet very much, but hey. I also have a cat, which is great. I like to dress her up. She hates it. It's awesome. So today is a really big day for us at the Iconic. It's actually our 6th birthday, so we've been around 6 years. We've been growing massively year on year, and obviously New Relic's helped us there. I've actually turned my phone off for this talk. I don't want it to ring. It's actually a bit worrying. So 6th birthday means 30% off across our entire site. We're going to smash hundreds of targets today. Well, I say hundreds, lots of targets. Number of orders shipped, number of orders picked, revenue, you name it. It's a pretty big day. So actually being here is kind of cool. And it proves actually that I have confidence in our infrastructure and our monitoring to make sure that if things do go wrong, I'm aware of them. So this is my desk. Honestly, this is actually what it looks like every day. On the left there is a Mac Mini, which powers those 2 monitors. Gives me kind of what we like to call our pane of glass, a view of our entire stack at any one time. So I have GA on the left, which, by the way, I've changed a lot of these numbers on the screen. So my company gets a bit funny about giving out numbers, and I have to go through legal, which is a pain in the ass. So we've got GA on the left, gives me a good idea of what's going on the site. I've also got things like which voucher codes are failing. So there's a lot of insights data here. So which voucher codes are failing, we tie into a lot. Number of orders going through in the last 15 minutes. What our queues are doing at any one time. So we're very big on RabbitMQ in the back end. And we have a lot of tons, I think there's probably 15, 20,000 messages going through every minute, which is quite nice to keep an eye on. Failure rates on our mobiles, which card types are being used, all that kind of stuff. Then on the right, we have all of our services as well. So we've actually got quite a lot more services than that, but they're the key ones. And it gives me a kind of overview of where everything's at any one time. And we use RPMs to see what's going on, error rates, and the numbers or colors change when things do go wrong, which is quite nice. So you just leave it on all the time, and if something goes wrong, you just see it at a glance. We also have a couple more around the office just for our developers to see. So, and this is where I guess the whole insights dashboarding gets really cool, is that we can just configure everything that we want to see. If we want to put up on our dashboards how much revenue we've made for the day, and a day like today is exactly when we should be doing it, the business can see all those kind of numbers. And then obviously my laptop. So that's cool. So what I'm going to talk about today is something which we call full service engineering, or I call full service engineering. Probably should be more full stack engineering. So the way we work at the Iconic is our teams are responsible for everything. And it wasn't always this way. Back when we had a monolith, and we moved to the cloud a couple of years ago, we used to be in a data center like a lot of other companies were. And we hired a DevOps company, external, to consult with us and get us onto the cloud. It is a big task, but these days we do it all ourselves. And we have a DevOps team which are responsible for, I guess, the underlying architecture. We're in the process of rolling out Kubernetes. We've got 3 or 4 clusters running, and we're trying to convince our teams, or teach our teams, I guess, how to deploy properly to them. So the way we structure our teams, we have fully cross-functional teams. So every team has everything that it needs. It has product owners, developers, designers, data engineers, business analysts, whatever we need to get the job done. And then our developers are responsible for writing the infrastructure as code, writing the deploy scripts, writing the monitoring, writing the logging, writing the actual applications as well. It's not been an easy task to get us there, but it works really well for us now. You will see that I didn't put QA on here, and there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that later. But that's basically how we structure our teams. Didn't work. There. So what I'm going to talk about today is very much, I guess, the culture that we've tried to build at the Iconic and how it really works with our teams. And primarily is the monitoring side of it. Being a New Relic conference, it makes sense to talk about monitoring. So there's two types of monitoring, as some of us touched on earlier, proactive monitoring and reactive monitoring. We want to avoid reactive monitoring as much as we can. This often comes for customers calling and saying, hey, something's wrong. You go and fix it, add in the monitoring so that if it does happen again, you will know in advance, which basically becomes proactive. This has happened a lot in the past. Often our CEO comes down and says, hey, site's not working, it's embarrassing for everyone. Or a head of product or a CTO comes up, and again, it's always the people who you respect a lot, and they're quite high up in the company that seem to find these problems before us. So we've invested a lot of time and energy into proactive monitoring. And specifically, we use a lot of the New Relic stack. We use a lot more tools, and I'll touch on that later, but we use a lot of the New Relic stack to make sure everything we do has the right monitoring behind it. And we've been building on New Relic. We've been using it for 4 years now at the Iconic, and we've slowly been improving our practices and stack to make sure we are as resilient as possible. So we store a lot of events. I grabbed this out of Insights the other day. So we store over, in this case, 500 million events. I don't know what a lot of the events are, but that's all inside of New Relic. And this is, you have to sort through this data and make sure that it's relevant to what you're trying to do. So how do we work with our teams? This is a bit of, I guess, a case study. That's actually not the team. That's the wider team, sort of. But a bit of a case study around our customer operations team. So our customer operations team essentially is responsible for our checkout, our catalog pages, making sure that we ship orders on time, and that we can actually take payment. I also used to be in this team, so I have a bit of a love for it as well. So what do we do? So what I try and make sure is that all of our teams are able to build the monitoring themselves. And this is really important for us. So we need to make sure that they can build their dashboards, that they can build their tests, that when they put a new service into production, everything works. And I mentioned we were moving to Kubernetes, and there's a reason for that. It means that everything's going to be Dockerized, and we allow our teams to build new services, microservices essentially. We're rolling out different languages, Python. We're a PHP shop by trade, and we love PHP. I love PHP. But we're also moving to Python, Node, a few other languages. And what this means is if we're rolling out new services, new containers, the teams also have to be on board. They have to write the infrastructure and deployment, but they really need to do the monitoring. And we've said to the teams as well, you want to use Go, you can use Go, but I'm not going to provide you any support there because I don't know Go. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night to do it. So you have to be confident your monitoring works. Your monitoring will alert you, not me, and that we know when something's wrong and fix it. So this is really cool. This is actually one of our iOS engineers built this. So he wanted to know all the failures that were happening inside of our app. So he built a dashboard, and he actually built multiple dashboards. And this is all inside of Insights again. So we can see the kind of errors that are going on. Some of the numbers may be high at times, but number of errors on the checkout. The one on the right highlighted a bug in our catalog. So for some reason, customers are trying to add products to cart that actually aren't available. Occasionally, we have a lot of problems, and the teams recognize that someone had made a deployment, and we allowed them or the customers to try and add products to cart that they shouldn't have been able to. And this dashboard for this team in general actually fixed that, or picked it up anyway. What else do we have? So the guys touched on Synthetics here. We don't use browser. It's probably the only product we don't use. But I'm keen to see the integrations that the team have been working on. So again, Synthetics. This is actually our most important script in our entire stack. So we use priorities P1, 2, 3, 4 for incidents. If this script fails, it triggers a P1, essentially. So it alerts everyone that is on needs to be online, and brings them all online. It essentially goes through the whole site. So it goes to the home page, select a category, select a product, add it to cart, go to checkout, sign up, purchase, done. and we have to make sure we get to that confirmation page. And we do this all in production. I really like the idea of running it in staging. We don't do that, but it's something that we need to build into as a bit of an evolution, I guess, into our pipeline. But yeah, it's our most important script. It doesn't fail very often, but when it does, it's usually 3 a.m. It's just annoying. But yeah, and the teams write a lot of these. So I think we've probably got about 15, 20 synthetics tests running in production at the moment. We use a lot of pings as well, just to make everything should have a ping against it, just to make sure the service is running a 200, which is cool. What else do the teams work on? So this is a new thing for us, and this is infrastructure. It's kind of cool. So we also make sure that the services are being monitored properly, that they're not using too much CPU, too much memory, too much whatever it is. Our image servers run on FAML, and what we started doing as well is putting monitoring here to say, is this process running? So is the FAML process actually running? If it stops for whatever reason, we have quite a big problem. It means we're not serving images. Although things like synthetics will probably pick up some of this as well. But we do a lot of making sure that processes are running, that the services that the teams are using work. And then we use alerts. So we actually still use a hybrid of the old alerts and new alerts. At some point, we will move 100% to the new alert system. But we're slowly getting there. And again, we ask the teams to say, right, well, you know your system that you're building right now, put in the monitoring. In this case, things like AJAX response times, or if throughput goes too low. So we always monitor throughput if everything stops. It's a good thing to know. Again, synthetics will pick it up, but it's not a bad thing to double check. Error rates, application metrics and things. We use this quite heavily, especially around error rates and APM. And we say, hey, if error rate goes over a certain amount for a long period of time, trigger alerts. Or if error rate exceeds a certain percentage, immediately trigger alerts. And what we're trying to do is essentially push traffic to the right teams at the right time so everyone knows about it. So as always, DevOps set the baseline. Our DevOps team's quite small. Technically, it's 3 people, 5 if you include myself and my boss. But it's about 3 normally. And they'll always set the baseline. So they'll add in all the basic monitorings. They say CPU on the RDS instances. They'll always make sure we've got that our Kubernetes cluster's running, that supervisor's running. Weirdly, it runs on the Chrome machine, but hey. And they'll also go through and just do audits every so often, make sure the teams are doing the right things, which is cool. So all this can lead to alert fatigue, as I'm sure some of you are aware. This has been a big problem for us recently. We get so many alerts, and it's to a point where my email is getting flooded, pages are going off, the new Relic app's going off, and all the other apps that we use are going off, and it's a big problem. So we tried to work out 2 ways around it. The first was to create 2 engineering on-call streams. So one for our internal customers, one for our external customers. And this means that there's only really ever one person on call, usually for a 1-week rotation per stream, and that they're responsible for the alerts. So the rest of the team can kind of step back and say, OK, you know what? We're OK with this, at least for critical alerts. And then we go in one step further, and we're actually, and this is a work in progress right now, we're aggregating everything. So we did a bit of a whiteboard session and tried to work out how many alerting platforms we had, monitoring platforms we had that are pushing metrics into our system, and there are actually way too many of them. But we need them all. So, we need them all. Have a chat with the PagerDuty guys next door. Eric and his team are pretty awesome to work with. What we're trying to do is use tools like that to pump all of our data and metrics into one system and trigger the incidents at the right times. So we're going one step further and saying, OK, use the P1 to P4 kind of priorities and saying, well, if it's a P3 or a P4, send it to the team. We don't the engineer on call doesn't care about it. It shouldn't wake them up in the middle of the night, but the team should know about it. If there's a P3, send a page to the team that needs to deal with it. If If it's a P2 or P1, then we trigger more serious incidents, and we make sure that all of our teams are alerted and brought online at the right times. You can also suppress things, which we're trying to do as well. No one wants to be woken up in the middle of the night. The iconics vary. We only serve Australia and New Zealand, so if error rate spikes at 4 a.m., probably doesn't need to wake anyone up. If everything crashes and burns, then probably a different story. So, a bit on our culture. Facebook coined this term, move fast and break things. I love this term. I use it a lot at work. They also have a new term, I guess, which is move fast with stable infrastructure. We're still getting there. We're working on it. Hopefully in the next, once we're fully rolled out of our infrastructure, or our Kubernetes infrastructure, I guess, we'll move towards it. But I'm fully OK with people breaking things, and it's kind of something that we really push. Now, I mentioned earlier we don't have QA on our teams, and there's a reason for that. We actually just got rid of them. So we've actually moved them to engineers. They're full engineers now, or they're in business roles. But we decided we've got all these engineers, and they're developing every day. They're releasing features, and they're testing their own work. We don't need a second layer of eyes on it. It just makes people lazy. But what we do is say, OK, how can we make sure that we can minimize impact on our customers? So we introduce feature toggles. Every feature that goes into production has to be behind a feature toggle. Feature toggle is either on, meaning go to the new feature, or off, go to the old feature. And then we bucket users as well. So all of our features generally hit our internal staff first. So if you're using a staff email address, we'll give you a new feature, and then we'll give you the old one. And we monitor the error rates between them. We're in the process of trying to roll out new tools as well to say, OK, we've released this feature. Slowly increase the percentage if the error rate doesn't trigger. And Relic can push this data back into our systems and say, OK, the error rate is increasing, then roll back the new feature. And then we can fix the errors. Now, when I say I don't mind people breaking things, I really don't. I'd rather the teams move as fast as possible and push stuff into production. So what happens when it does break? Well, this was actually, as you can see, October 11. One of my teams decided to roll out a change to our image processing and broke everything. And he actually felt really bad about it, which was good, because if you don't feel bad about breaking things, then actually you probably shouldn't be deploying. I want you to feel bad, but I'm not going to have a go at you, because if you feel bad, what's the point in me shouting at you as well? So he broke it, and it was actually for quite a long period. It took us nearly an hour to recover, but it's not the end of the world, So let me just, So it doesn't really matter. So that's actually my phrase at the top. It's the recovery that's important. Nothing's wrong with breaking things. No one will die, and our customers benefit more if we move fast. Some of your industries, you can't afford to have downtime. And that's fine, then you probably shouldn't be releasing as fast as we do. We, on average, probably deploy 20, 30 times a day across all of our services. And we're also lucky. We're a fashion retailer, an e-commerce retailer. If people can't get something right now, they generally come back later and buy from us then. So we're lucky in that sense. And afterwards, the guy who, I probably shouldn't have put his name there, the guy who broke it, he sent his manager a message just saying, he was, and this is why I asked him if he minded, because he was genuinely surprised at the support he got after breaking everything. And I honestly thought that was a really nice thing, that he felt supported, and he didn't felt like we were all, coming down on him and shouting, and there was no one standing over his shoulder. And I'd strongly suggest, if these are your teams, encourage them to fail fast, and release as fast as possible, because you will benefit, you will innovate more, and your teams will be happier, and probably stay longer as well. So finally, ChatOps is your best friend. We're starting to use this a lot more. We've noticed that a lot of alerts come out via email. You can end up with an email box full of stuff, and no one reads it. It gets filtered into different folders. But what's weird is when you use Slack or HipChat or any other tool, when you use these tools, people actually just glance at them and use them as informational, and I guess don't ignore them so much. So we put a lot of stuff into HipChat right now, but we're moving to Slack. That's another story. And we've got plenty of, I guess, integrations. If I want, I can run a worker, I can re-index our Solr instances, I can find out who's on call if I want to. We've got Chuck Norris bot to tell Chuck Norris jokes. Audit trails from AWS go in, so this is really cool. So when someone logs into AWS consoles or fails to log in, creates a new IAM role, all those kind of things, we dump that into chat as well. It doesn't need an email. Monitoring, so New Relic pumps data into here via secondary platforms and all this other stuff. So it's really cool, and I honestly suggest everyone to chat ops everything. Make it really chatty. You can set up, especially with Slack, you can get little buttons, so you can say, hey, I want to run this, and your bot can say, okay, which service do you want me to run? What do you want me to execute? And you can click on the little buttons. It's really cool. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm not sure how long I spoke for. Thank you very much.